Well. Another day, another time, another moment where we've got the Andrew Cooperrider show coming at you. I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider. I welcome you. I thank you for joining me, of course. And today we've got some wonderful two topics. I really want to dig into two topics. One is earlier this week I'd posted about the F-150 Lightning, troubling statistic on its towing and a few other things. And I made a post that hit upon this. I've talked about this a little bit before. I don't think people really understand the ins and outs and how much the Kentucky taxpayer has paid for this truck and is paying for this truck and the amount we're leveraged in on this. And so I'm going to dig into that here today. We're going to talk about the over $500 million. That's right. $500 million of taxpayer funds have gone out over the last year. Kentucky taxpayer funds. We're not talking about federal government. We're talking about the state of Kentucky has invested. Remember, guys, invested into electric vehicles, specifically most of that into the F-150 Lightning, and some issues are already afoot. And we'll dig into that. Also, I'm going to talk about the Trump FBI raid because, geez, oh, Pete, I just have so many opinions. So we'll be getting down to that. But first, guys, if you can, please like, comment, share to support us. Hit the share button if you're listening on the Facebook. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe and the bell button so you get alerts about us. And of course, if you're listening to this as a replay, you can always catch it in the podcast form. We're on all major podcast platforms. Just search Andrew Cooperrider and make sure you subscribe to the podcast there. Finally, you can stay up to date with everything we have going on. You can text the word Liberty to 33777. You can text the word Liberty to 33777 to stay up to date on everything. And you can also, if you can, help me out here. I am running for state treasurer. If you want somebody in office that actually is paying attention and cares and believes in limited government and small government, believes that government doesn't create economic opportunity but can only hinder it, which is what we're kind of going to talk about a bit today. And if you're with me there, please go to Andrew4ky.com, Andrew4ky.com. Check out my website there, share it with people, but also hit that donate button. Okay, help a campaign out, right? It's not enough to just sit around and complain. We have to do something about it, and you do it through time and money. And so please go ahead and do that. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, that's the day these comes out. Tomorrow, Wednesday, in Louisville at the Northeastern Regional Library at 7 p.m. We will be having a conservative activism class 101. Kind of teaches you the ins and outs of how to be a conservative activist. We talk about rallies and we'll talk about protests, what their point is, calling campaigns on bills, and then how that manifests itself elsewise. So let's go ahead and jump into it and dig into it. Please, once again, hit that share button and let's go. Okay, so let's talk about this F-150 post. So earlier this week, I made a post of a screenshot of an article from the Western Journal showing that journalists hooked up an RV up to a $93,000 Ford Lightning and found it wouldn't even make it 100 miles before needing recharge. Now, and it's a funny line from the article, talks about how a fully charged truck only has as much energy as a truck with 4 gallons of gas in it. So first, let's talk about let's talk about why I even care so much. So if people want to buy an electric truck, then they can feel free to do it. Now, I'm a truck owner. I'm not a Ford guy. I'm a Dodge guy. I've got a Ram 1500. But so I'm a truck guy, but I can tell you this much, right? This isn't just an issue with F-150 Lightnings. This is an issue with all electric trucks. Anytime you hook up any kind of weight to them for towing, they say that the range will drop below 100 miles. And if you're towing, if you're going to the boat for the weekend, if you are pulling horses at all, you put 2 horses. I grew up on a small, we had like a small little farm, of sorts. We had probably about 20 acres or so, and we had a couple of horses. And so we'd go on down to the 4-H all the time to show the horses. My sister was real into that. And the 4-H fairground from where I grew up was a good, 30, 40, 50-minute drive. So, you only get 90 miles of towing a horse trailer with 2 horses in it. I've seen that there out of the Rivian truck. And so you go over to the fairgrounds, and now what? The fairgrounds have to have the EV plugins and everything else. Now, I hear you when people say, well, most people don't tow with their trucks. I hear you on that. Okay. If I'm to be honest, I've towed only a few times with my truck over the last year. I use the bed more than anything. I use the bed a lot. A lot. I do it with one of my companies. We carry around a lot of equipment at times with that, and I've used it for that. I've also I use my bed for a number of different things. I'm not going to go all into it, but I use the bed in my truck a lot. I'm so thankful I have a truck, and I certainly need one. And so the argument being is that, well, look, a lot of people don't tow. And so if they need a truck for bed carrying or things like that, they're going to go ahead, they're going to buy this electric vehicle, and it's a reasonable replacement. I hear you there. But here's the problem, okay? One is it does make it a little bit of a kind of a novelty. It's a novelty truck in a way, right? So you kind of want a truck to put some stuff in and everything else. You want a bed, everything, but you don't tow. And so you're like, well, I'm going to get the electric truck and everything else. I hear you there. But see, the problem is that I'm gonna be honest with you. At one point, several months ago, I actually made a comment to somebody that, man, I may get an electric truck there. And then I found out how much they tow. Because I'm like, geez, oh Pete, I already a 400-mile range, or less than 400-mile range, once they're plugged in and charged up. And so that's kind of iffy, there as far as charging time goes. But and then I find out about this towing thing, and I got to be honest with you, I'm just 100% honest. Nobody who owns a truck should buy a truck. I don't care if you only tow once a year, twice a year, it doesn't matter. The very fact you would buy a truck that can only tow less than 100 miles, it's like, why are you buying a truck? You might as well just buy a car and attach a trailer to it when you need to carry stuff around outside, right? If you're going to, and that's something people don't understand. I understand most people don't tow very often with their trucks, but it's the fact that you can tow with it that is important to people. So follow me here, right? The Ford Lightning right now, it looks like it's about $100,000. That's right. $93,000 is the Ford Lightning. And you can't tow with it, basically is what it means. And so if you're going to spend that amount of money on a vehicle, you might as well buy a vehicle that you can actually tow with and drive around. Now, people are going to be like, well, but you got the savings on the gas and everything else. Now, it's we're going a little bit into the math on this, but a similarly equipped truck, let's say, as the Ford Lightning, be about $60,000. Let's say on the high side. Right now they're 90, so it's $33,000 more. Average truck gets, let's say, 15 miles a gallon. That's what my truck gets. 15 miles to the gallon. So that is the price difference. There's 2,200 gallons of gas. I'm sorry. The price difference there of $33,000. If we divide that out, let's say the average price of gas is even at 3. What's up it? What's up it all the way up to 4? Let's say gas stays at $4 a gallon. That's 8,250 gallons you can buy for $33,000. And if I'm getting 15 miles to the gallon, that's 123,000 miles. So in order for you to offset the price, not to mention the fact you also are paying interest on that $33,000 difference unless you're paying cash for the truck. So if you're going to buy a brand new truck for $60,000, you will not see a savings. And that's assuming you don't pay $1 for electric. So you got to pay for your electricity too going into the vehicles. So you're right now with current tech and everything else, buying an electric truck compared to a gas truck, and the price difference and everything that we've gone over here. Okay. You would have to drive a brand new truck 150,000 miles before you start to get in the range of breaking even to if you just bought compared to electric truck versus a gas truck. And let me ask you, if you're going to spend, are you really going to spend more money on a truck that can do less. No, you're not. And the novelty of this will wear off. You're not going to see mass buys of it. Now, you could say, well, Andrew, people want to buy it. Why does it bother you so much and everything else? I am not that bothered by the fact that Ford has decided to build a novelty vehicle that costs way too much. That means that it's not even an economically good decision for anybody, because once again, as I just went over, you could buy a $60,000 truck and drive 150,000 miles before you even broke even on the cost or started to look like you're going to, if gas stayed at $4 a gallon. Now that's assuming it's below that right now. I know it moves up and down, but right now gas prices are down a little bit. It'd be even more miles. But why does this bother me so? Well, it's been almost a year since one of the most egregious actions I've ever seen government do, the state of Kentucky do, occurred about a year ago. So what happened is our state legislature was called into a emergency session by the governor in order to vote to extend the state of emergency for the vid, and then also to do a few more things because of hospital shortages and a few things like that. And then on top of that, they were also brought in to pass a few other bills and add on some NTI days too. If you remember, they added on 10 NTI days. And so there's a bunch of stuff that happened. This was about a year ago. And there was one other thing they did. And there's this bill passed. And it was one of the most egregious bills I've ever seen a state government do. And this is why. Now, let's go through the process here. So they passed a bill that was essentially giving $410 million taxpayer dollars to they didn't list who exactly. Okay, so basically there was this company that was going to bring in 5,000 jobs into the area. But because of non-disclosure agreements and everything else, the state legislators, or only leadership was allowed to know, and that's pretty much it. So about 4 or 5 people were read in on it, and they were called in, and they were told who the company was and everything else, and what the deal was. And this deal was also worked out by Beshear. Now, the point man on this deal out of the Beshear administration, well, there's a little issues caught later on that I'll talk about here in a second. So basically what had occurred is there was this bill that would say, it was worded to say that they would give $410 million in monies. And so 350 million of it was a forgivable loan. So there's 350 million straight cash. We're not even talking about tax incentives. We're talking cash money, boom, in the bank. There's about another 20 million was being used to pay off a piece of property that then was going to be given to this company, whoever this was. There was also, 30 million pulled out for training programs at a local college. So this was going in there kind of in Hardin County. There's this land there at the spur off of the railroad track. It's a very desirable piece of land. And they ended up, and then there was a 30 million for a training program there that was at like a college or school. They do this sometimes where they say, well, we'll train your employees for you. And so there was that money put into putting together an employee training program for this thing too as well. And so it ended up being a total of $410 million to a company that was investing supposedly billions of dollars. The problem becomes is that one, first, big picture here, what is government's role, right? I would argue that is never government's role to invest. And first off, it's never their role to invest. We as Republicans, it's in our party platform, are supposed to believe that government doesn't create economic opportunity, but can actually only hinder it. That is what we're supposed to believe. Now, that always doesn't transfer through clearly, but so first, I would argue that it shouldn't even be a thing that this is ever considered, regardless of who the company is. But what's more important here for me, as I'm seeing it, is that what's more important here than even that for this, let's say you're one of those Republicans, let's say you're one of those people that believe government has a role in creating economic opportunity, right? So let's say you are one of those people. Well, we should at least, as taxpayers, get a chance to weigh in on this, right? I mean, we're talking about $410 million. Shouldn't we get an opinion? More importantly, shouldn't our representatives get an opportunity to have an opinion as well? But no, so they were pulled in and they were told, you're going to vote yes on this bill for $410 million. You're going to vote yes on it to a company that you don't know what it is. You're just going to have to trust us. It's a good decision. And there was all but 9 or 10 reps voted yes. And at the state Senate level, nearly every single one of them, 1 or 2 maybe voted no. Nearly everybody in the House, but like 4 or 5 voted yes. And this passed with almost unilateral support. Let me put it to you another way: 130-ish, because we have 100 House reps, 38 senators, 130-ish of your representatives at the state level, state senators and House reps, voted yes on giving $410 million to, they didn't know who, they didn't know what. They just knew that it was supposed to bring in a lot of economic opportunity, at least 5,000 jobs. And so after the fact, after the deal is done, we find out that it is this deal between Ford and a it's a deal with Ford and SK Innovations for a battery plant. Now, you could be asking yourself, a battery plant, what's so interesting to them about a battery plant? Well, it's a plant specifically being used for the F-150 Lightnings. It's a Ford, not just F-150 Lightnings, but all Ford electric vehicles this plant will be making the batteries for. Now, it certainly would have been nice to have had a chance as citizens to have weighed in on this. Because I'm going to be honest, and I think a lot of people see this here recently. Electric vehicles are not as a for sure bet as maybe we originally thought they would be. There's a lot of issues here, okay? Here's the first one. The grid. The grid is not built to handle that amount. So to give you an idea, 2 electric cars plugged in pull more wattage than the average home is expected to pull at one time. So you come in, you plug in 2 vehicles, right? And then you're because you're coming home at 5 and ish time, and your wife comes home, you both plug in the old vehicles, and then you go in the house, you turn the washer, the dryer, everything else. And this is from the Thomas Massey got into it, Pete Buttigieg over this here. Thomas Massey from Kentucky, one of Kentucky's congressmen, got into this and said, the plugging in a Tesla is equivalent to having 50 refrigerators plugged in. And so that's just one. Now you got to make that 2. Now, a lot of people say, well, is Thomas Massey just talking? No, Thomas Massey actually lives the way a lot of the left wants to think they can make everybody live on a large scale. Thomas Massey lives off the grid. He's all solar powered. He's got his house is ran off Tesla batteries in the basement. He is completely green. He does not. He doesn't use power, but from solar and wind, and as such, and his water system is gravity fed. He lives completely green and off the grid. And but so he understands this stuff. He lives the way the left wants us all to live. And he's even saying, look, it is not there. The tech isn't there. So one is the grid, two is the batteries. It's the range is getting there, is there at the 400-ish miles. That's about average range of a fueled up car. The problem is the charging aspect. It's 20 to 30 minutes at one of these rapid chargers. If you pull up and you plug in and it's a rapid charger, it's 30 minutes. People don't want to stop for 30 minutes every 400 miles and hope too that there's a chance for them to plug in, because, well, if they don't plug in, there's another aspect to electric vehicles that we haven't really figured out. And what happens when they run out of juice on the side of the road? It happens. People run out of gas on the side of the road all the time. What do? Well, you go, you get a gas can, you put it in the car, you catch a ride, everything else. What do you do for a Tesla that runs out of power on the side of the road? You have to tow it. That's what they have to do. They have to call out a wrecker. They got to tow it to the closest outlet, and then they plug it in and charge it. So that becomes an issue as we talk about electric vehicles. So I am sure once we get green energy figured out, which is look, the entire problem with the Democrats' issue here is they're trying to force us to be where we are not at. I am not saying we will not be there where an electric truck is a reasonable choice to make. I am not saying we will not be at a point where our grid can handle it. I'm not saying we won't be at a point where our power is actually coming from all green or nuclear or what have you energy sources. I'm just saying we are not there now. And that's something the Democrats fail to recognize. They want to force us to be there by making our lives miserable and harder, like high gas prices and everything else. And also overstating things. So this goes back into this Ford thing. Going back into it, we have so one would have loved before $410 million of my money was invested somewhere to have been able to have these conversations about what do we actually expect the time frame is on this. Because they want to pretend like, well, we'll have this plant up and going. It'll be producing 5,000 jobs and all these jobs and everything else in 5 years. What happens? That's a long time between now and then. Not a long time for technology to develop and make it there to where it needs to be. I think we're probably 10 to 20 years off from that. But more importantly, one, more people are going to be making electric vehicles on the market. Will it be as big of a market? Because people are still going to want gas. Two, the grid won't be ready. Once again, the grid will not be there. Three, here's another issue: lithium. Lithium is very caustic to mine. Keep in mind that, getting a battery for one of these Teslas does significant environmental damage. But outside of that, or Teslas, I keep saying Teslas, but any of these EVs does significant environmental damage. But there is real issues with lithium and where we get it from, right? So where does lithium come from? Well, lithium is coming from, lithium is coming from a couple different countries, Australia, Chile, and China. Mine 86% of the world's lithium. Now, there's a big problem here. China, we're not exactly on great terms with. You see what's going on with Taiwan and everything else. And so do we really want our economy? How is our economy becoming dependent on China? Kentucky's economy specifically becoming too dependent upon China. Who is the number one importer of soybeans from America? China. And soybeans are grown in Kentucky. It's actually I believe our number one cash crop right now. One of our highest cash crops, if not number one cash crop. And so because of that, Kentucky farmers are already relying upon China buying up our soybeans. Now, China has been out and developing farming out in Africa and everything else, trying to secure their own soybean sources so they don't have to deal with American soybean farmers. That's already becoming an issue and something that Kentucky has to worry about. But now also, we're becoming this big EV state, and we're worried about China and lithium. That's a problem. But on top of this 410 million, so the vote, the representatives vote on this. They have no idea what they're voting for. They just voted to give out $410 million of your tax dollars. They don't know who to build. They don't know what. And I think some of them finding out what it is, and as they're seeing time go on, probably regret the vote an awful lot. But the problem is one, there's a lot of new people in there, but two, because our majority is pretty recent. But two, there was some threats implied and stated that said, you are going to vote for this from leadership. Now, like I said, I don't think it's government's role. I don't think it makes you good Republicans. And it may not be popular to say, and I know a lot of the more quote unquote moderate Republicans get turned off when I talk about this deal, because they know I feel so strongly about this deal, because I think it was wrong and bad, and it's not the purpose of government, and it's a misappropriation of funds. And I'm sorry, but it's anti the Republican Party platform. It is. But on top of that, then moving forward, Bashir throws another 110 million out there. And now this is mainly Bashir, on another battery plant. So now we are over $500 million. We're $520 million invested in the electric vehicle industry here in Kentucky. What else do electric vehicles need? Well, they certainly need semiconductors. Once again, issues with China. I mean, it's just our economy is so based upon us getting along with China here in Kentucky that when something happens between America and China, Kentuckians are going to feel the wrath, because we have not protected we've decided to take ourselves on a globalist route. See, that was the entire point when Trump's talking about America first and bringing our supply lines inside and everything else and anti-globalism. It's basically to say, look, what goes on over here or over there shouldn't affect us here at home. We have the natural resources. We have the ability. We should be as self-contained as possible as a country, and then as a state. But yet we're getting more and more invested and dependent upon a economic relationship with China, who is not friendly with us right now. And I do not see a good future with China. And more importantly, we cannot remain to be economically friendly with China if we're going to survive as a country, because they are taking over things. And by survive as a country, I don't mean that. I'm saying survive as the number one, a country in the world, superpower, whatever you want to call it, the leader of the world. We if we don't want communism to spread, we cannot allow China to gain ground. But here in Kentucky, we're relying upon it. Now, so they do this $410 million deal, and they had a big fanfare. Here's old Bashir out there. This was really happened. They threw up a stage there in front of the Capitol, big old Ford logo on it. And you got your governor out there talking about Ford. I mean, it's just so disgusting when you think about it, right? This right here, that right there. Seeing over $400 million of your tax dollars that was taken from you essentially at gunpoint, because if you don't pay it, you're going to jail. And if you don't go to jail, they're going to bring guys with guns to take you to jail. Being taken and used for a private company to expand out their operations, and not just the free market allowing it to work. Mussolini, the Italian dictator, said that fascism would be better described as corporatism, because it's just having the corporations marrying together government and corporations. We are seeing our state capital right there with one of the largest companies in the world's logo put on it at our seat of government power. Some could say that's fascism. There you go. There's Bashir sitting there. And you see off to the left there, you see some of the members of the Senate there, the state Senate there. And I'm sure you see some of that there. The leading EV battery producer in the U.S., Kentucky is working at becoming. That's right. Over $500 million dollars put forward to making us the leading battery producer. Were you ever at? It's not even, you know what? If we arrived at this conclusion and that's what we arrived at, and we talked about it and everything else, and this is where we were at, okay. I wouldn't like it, but at least it was properly discussed and talked about. But did you remember a moment where we had the chance as citizens to talk about whether or not we wanted to spend $500 million on battery factories here in Kentucky? What about the waste they produce? Has there been environmental studies in the waste that battery factories produce? Of course not. But have we been asked? Were we given an opportunity to talk about it? Were we given an opportunity to voice our concerns and somebody answer them? No, we were not. $500 million of your dollars. Not even a chance to speak up. There's Senate leadership standing there in front of Ford real happy about their secret deal they did. I'm sorry, but it's and I know and I hear you, and I know a lot of you guys listen to this there that don't always agree with me all the time and are the more, I hesitate to call establishment Republican. I don't think that fully covers it, but the type of Republican that believes this is something government could do and this deal is a good deal and we should be celebrating it. And I know right now you're probably yelling at me, yelling at the screen, telling me I don't understand, but I tell you this much. I challenge you, say, I understand exactly where you're coming from. And in a perfect world, you're right, but this isn't what our government should be doing. I just don't think this is what our government should be doing. It is not its role. It's not its role. And so I just want to give a little background on that post there and about why I posted about that and why it was worth talking about, because, well, 410 million of your tax dollars were put into producing batteries for that truck. And who knows? I mean, as battery technology changes, does that mean the battery factories change too? Is it a short-term thing where really here in a short amount of time we'll have to change up? I don't know. Okay, one more thing I want to talk about here, and that's the Trump raid, the FBI Mar-a-Lago raid. Guys, look, there's a reason why so many Republicans are coming out early on and saying, look, there's no there. This is ridiculous, a miscarriage of justice, because historically this is what has happened. I'm just being honest. Historically, it's always happened that Trump is accused of doing something, and then there's no there, and nothing happens, or it's not nearly as bad as they said it is. We saw it with the impeachment stuff. We're seeing it with the January 6th trial. We've seen it with the Christopher Steele dossier about Russian plants or whatever. There has never been no there. They all got it wrong. Or maybe they knew it was wrong. They were trying to produce something that wasn't there because they're trying to make Trump look bad. So that's why you're seeing a lot of Republicans coming about this. Now, this is what I know. This is what I've seen. This is what I've heard, okay? FBI raid this place, but it was odd that they come in and they do that because Trump team has been priorly very working with them a lot on this. In fact, even having them out to Mar-a-Lago before, the FBI out to Mar-a-Lago to search the place and go through the place before, and have been very cooperative. And then to come in and just bust down the door like this seemed very odd. The other thing I've heard is they're in there, so they're looking for documents, classified documents, secret documents, everything else. You know, one of the things I've seen from Trump saying is that there was a standing order that says that the president, anything the president took home was declassified. And so if something's declassified, you can't mishandle it. Now, the president has sole discretion over classifying or declassifying items. They can choose to just do it. Now, if there's a claim that he didn't follow a proper process, well, who creates the process? It is the president in charge of the executive branch. The executive branch, he has sole discretionary power. If he describes if he says this is declassified, you're going to have a hard time arguing in court that it is not that easy for this president. It's as simple for the president as saying that's declassified. It should be that simple because he's the one that creates the processes. You know, there's something that somebody said to me, a legislator kind of said to me once, is that the legislators don't need to follow the law. They need to follow the Constitution because they write the law. So if a law conflicts with what they're doing, they just change it. Well, in this case, the executive doesn't need to follow the president doesn't need to follow classification laws because he writes the rules on what's classified and what's not. And if he's violent, he can just change it. And he said he had a standing order that these things were declassified. So that becomes the first question where we need to talk about. The other thing is like I said, we got these dubious claims. They've always been a little dubious over whether or not Trump has actually done anything. It's always been no there there. And then the sheer historic nature of this matter that they raid a former president's home. We can't even see Hillary Clinton, Hunter Biden. We can't see any of them getting any raids or investigations or anything. But yet here we see and look, we've seen this out. And remember the New York City AG got elected on saying, I'm gonna convict Trump. And they said, on what? And they go, we'll find something. That's not how the law works. And this is clearly targeting. And this is something that this is politicization of the government agencies to fill a role. I'm experiencing it myself with my ABC case. Bashir is violating state law. He's violating the budget that said you can't expend more than $5,000 enforcing COVID mandates. I'm still in court to this day, facing my ABC license trying to be taken away. That is the governor weaponizing the ABC department in order to attack his political enemies, in order to attack his political threats or what have you, and trying to use government in a political way. And that's what we're seeing right here, Trump in this raid. I mean, this isn't, I'm sorry, but on a lower level, this is common, but this isn't uncommon. And the timing is very suspect too as well. If you remember, just a few days before, Trump has been talking a lot about schedule effing more employees, basically meaning that more employees can be hired and fired for political reasons than can. So normally, there's basically what this is the career bureaucrats, and so no matter who's in office, generally speaking, only 5-ish% of the executive branch actually changes. And that means you have people that have been there for a long time. And we saw all during the Trump administration that they would undermine him. We're seeing leaks, we're seeing things like that, but also they're just lying to him and not doing the things he told them to do. I mean, they literally admitted to lying to Donald Trump about how many troops were in Syria because he ordered a drawdown and they're lying about it. And so we saw that all the time. And so he was talking about how he's going to get rid of more of these people, and look at that. And then lo and behold, FBI raid. I'm telling you guys, it is, and I know there's some moderate Republicans out there clutching their pearls saying, now listen, you're jumping to conclusions and everything else. Name me no president who's been raided, and please point to anything here. But you can't. And there's going to be no there. And I got to ask all those kind of pearl clutching moderate Republicans, and even moderate Democrats that are coming down on, I know the far left, they don't care. They have doubles. If they didn't have a double standard, they have no standard. So they don't care. But the moderate Democrats, even when it comes out that there was no there, no matter how they try to spin it, and it'll be 5 years from now, I need you to tell me right now that you will come out and apologize for ever thinking Trump was guilty of something. I need you to right now say you're willing to do that. Because if you're not, you're going to believe you've already arrived at a conclusion. Trump's guilty of something illegal. He has to be, right? Because I don't like him. And so I'm going to find everything I can to fill in there. If you can honestly say you're not there, then you can admit that when, not if, but when it comes out. And it's going to be years from now, probably, because that's how it works. And the media is not going to cover it. And so some news source are going to have to show you, and you're going to have to just be like, well, whatever, I ignore it. Or, oh, that can't be reliable. I don't see the big media talking about it. You're going to need to, even though it's true. And we've seen this with saw that the Mueller report and all these people correcting things. We're like, well, he wasn't a Russian plan, as we said. And of course they say that, but the media won't cover it because they got it wrong too. But anyways, when that happens, I need you to promise me that you'll come out and say that. I don't believe you will. I don't believe you can promise that. But if you can say that, well, at least we can just agree to disagree on whether or not this raid was correct by the FBI for now. But when it comes out that it was an incorrect maneuver and it was politically driven, I expect you to admit it and say it to me. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me this week. We'll see you next week. Remember, like, comment, share, text Liberty 33777, and you can donate at Andrew, the number 4, KY.